Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for FMT's presentation of leveraging BI and Dynamics GP. My name is Lucas Darling, and I'm an account executive here at FMT Consultants, and I'm joined here by our very own BI practice manager, Jeff Fenn. For those of you who are not familiar with FMT, I'd like to just take a few moments to give you a brief introduction of our company. Here at FMT, we opened up for business in 1995, and since then have successfully completed over 1,500 projects and have accumulated over 355 clients spanning the U.S. and even into Canada. During this time, we've been able to establish ourselves as Southern California's leading provider of integrated solutions, and along with our 21 years of experience, we have grown to well over 80 team members located both in Carlsbad as well as Los Angeles. At FMT, we pride ourselves on our 5 core values, which we like to hold ourselves to each and every day. Those values include integrity, service excellence, collaboration, innovation, and passion. The FMT way is really something you begin to understand once you engage and begin doing work with us. With a combination of talent, experience, and methodology, we are fully dedicated to the success of your company. We offer a wide array of services pertaining to ERP, CRM, SharePoint, BI, and Office 365. We even have an entire department dedicated specifically to customer support with 13 full-time senior consultants serving you from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Here at FMT Consultants, we have extremely experienced consultants who are versed in all kinds of backgrounds, industries, and systems. We even have licensed CPAs employed. I'd like to just take a moment to show you a few of our clients who we get the privilege to work with on a daily basis. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jeff, but before I do, if at any point during the presentation you have a question, feel free to type them into the comment box. We will be monitoring it during the entire presentation and we will answer them at the end. Thank you. Jeff?
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to my webinar. I appreciate you guys taking a little bit of time out of your day to come and join us. So my goal today is to talk about Power BI with Dynamics GP. And in the past, I've done a number of different Power BI webinars as well as some Power BI sessions that are Enverge events. And people jumped onto it a little bit and get it, and it's really exciting to see people get in there and start making reports and dashboards and whatnot. But my goal today, I think, rather than diving into Power BI so much, but my goal today is to actually help you get started with Power BI with your Dynamics GP environment. So at the end of today, I'm hoping everybody can walk away from here and be able to quickly get up to speed making some Power BI reports from their GP data. And I can show you some of the different ways that can happen. So a few of the things we'll go over today, we'll talk about getting your data. So you have to get your data first before you can make any reports on it. Modeling the data, talking about things like if you want to filter the data, if you want to make some calculated columns or measures, maybe tying multiple data sources together, things like that. We can talk a little bit about modeling. And then visualizing, that's where we take your data and we visualize it into things like charts and graphs and KPIs and things like that. And then once you do that, you publish it. You publish it up to powerbi.com where people can then view it through the web, also on mobile devices as well as share it with other people in your company. And then sharing it, of course, with everybody else was my last thing on that slide. So how do we get there? So my goal is I'm going to go through just a few slides, but I'm basically going to jump into demo. And the idea being here is we are recording this session, so hopefully everybody can reference back to this on our YouTube channel at a later date if they want to get started. So we'll kind of go through all the steps. But how to get there? So the first thing you need to know is you need to know what's my SQL Server for my Dynamics GP instance. So I'm going to try and keep this less IT heavy, but there are some things you definitely have to know in order to get started. So you're going to need to know what your SQL Server name is. Then you'll need to go in and download Power BI Desktop and get that installed. You'll need to sign up for an account on powerbi.com. There's also the data gateway component. So this is what's used to essentially sync data up to powerbi.com to be leveraged by all those reports and dashboards. And then also in the newer versions of GP, I'll also talk about registering GP with Power BI such that you can display your Power BI reports within GP itself right there on your home page. All right, so getting the data. What are some of the ways we can get started with Power BI right away? Obviously, the simplest thing is you can actually you could basically export a smart list to Excel. You could upload your Excel spreadsheet up to Power BI, and then you can start making visualizations on it. Quick, down and dirty way to do it, but you could get started really quick. That's one way to go. Obviously, a SQL query. So I'll show you getting into SQL queries how to select data from the Dynamics GP database. It's not as hard as you think it is. GP Analysis Cubes is another option. So that's an add-on product, Microsoft product for Dynamics GP, but it's basically a data warehouse solution for Dynamics GP on top of your GP data. So they have cubes for basically sales and inventory, financial, and some of the other modules. So you can report off of that. And then for all of you on the latest versions of GP, there's also OData feed, basically, which is an open data protocol for consuming RESTful APIs. That's the kind of a technical definition there, but basically it's an easy way to interact with data and get data to an external application. So you can actually call OData feeds from Excel as well as Power BI and other end tools. So modeling the data, when we talk about modeling the data, that's where we'll leverage Power BI Desktop, and that's where you pull in the data sets, you can manage relationships, create calculated columns, measures, hierarchies. So if you have a date hierarchy or some sort of customer hierarchy you want to do, or territory hierarchy, you can build those out. Calculated tables, things like that. Explore time-based data. So the idea here is, if you need to have hierarchies of time, whether it's quarter, weekly, monthly, day, that sort of thing, you can do that kind of stuff, as well as this time last year, year to date, month to date, stuff like that. And basically any other data transformation stuff you have to go through. So with the Power BI Desktop and modeling, you can essentially do translations. So in GP, for example, SOP type of 2 in the database actually translates to order. So if you had to do something like that where you're mapping maybe numbers to values or anything like that, you can build those type of translation tables. And then once we model our data and we're ready to go, that's when we start visualizing it. So we want to start building dashboards and reports. So with Power BI Desktop or PowerBI.com, you can do both of these things. So on PowerBI.com, you can actually bypass using Power BI Desktop altogether, and you could pull data from data sources such as CRM Online, Salesforce, other types of online providers, as well as if you have the OData feed for GP set up externally to your organization, you could pull in data that way. But we'll be focusing on Power BI Desktop today. And with that, we can do things like charts and slicers, tables and matrices, gauges, other KPIs. Also, when you build these reports, they'll be very interactive. So from one chart to another, as you select elements of those charts, the other areas might filter down. And then you can publish these reports up to dashboards and basically create something like this with lots of different types of components and elements on your screen. And then the next thing to cover real quick is just to talk about some of the building blocks. So what makes up Power BI? So we kind of covered it already. The first thing is the data set. So we need to define what the data sets are going to be. So we have to pull the data from whatever GP database we need to get it from, model that data set, do that sort of thing in preparation. And then once we do that, we have the visualization aspect of it. We'll create the reports and the different charts and graphs and maps and stuff like that, and also has interactivity. We can set all that up. And then you'll have your reports, which contain one-to-many visualizations. And then from there, you can have dashboards, where a dashboard could be one visualization on a report, published up to or pinned to a dashboard, or it could be a whole report pinned to a dashboard, that sort of thing. All right, so with that, said, that's the end of my slide deck for the most part. But I wanted to jump into getting started. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and jump into my demo GP environment. And here I have Dynamics GP 2016 loaded. And one of the first things that you always have to identify is what's the data I'm going to need. So for example, if I go to sales transaction entry, here's a screen that I may want some data from. And my server is slow to respond, so that's coming up. So this is a sales transactions entry screen. Now, I may not know where in the database all of these fields are. So one of the tricks I wanted to show you this is more back from the old days, is how to identify where these screen elements are in your database. Now, prior to GP, I believe 2010, the table structure of GP was very confusing, not very intuitive. So if I were to go up and refresh my databases here. And go into this is my two company from GP. If you were to look at all the tables in GP, they are very confusing because it's RM00101, SOP 10100. All the developers out there will probably be very familiar with this type of thing. And one of the great things is there are resources out there on the web that will show you this table structure. So dyingdeveloper.com is a very good website. You can basically go into the module list here on the website and pick a module that you need. Let's say General Ledger. And then once here in the General Ledger, I can see what all of the Dynamics GP tables are. So this is a great way if you need to get in there and you need to drill into specific tables, you can figure out which tables you need. So for example, transaction work, all open journal entry transactions that haven't been posted are in this GL1000 table. If you scroll down, you'll also see something like the GL2000 table, which is the year-to-date transaction open. So this is basically where all your journal entries live after you post them. So this is a great website, shows all the tables across all the modules. But let's say you don't have access to this. So, and here's basically an example of all of those tables. So it's pretty hard to scroll through here and figure things out. So what GP has in it is if I need to understand what screens are and what tables belong to them, what I can do is jump into the resources. So if I go into GP here, and we're going to go to resource descriptions, there's different things here that I can use. So I can go to Windows, and what this will do is tell me what tables belong to what window. So if I come in here and let's say we're going to do the journal entry screen. So journal entry here, I can see that it's using tables GL transaction header work and this initialization table. So what is GL transaction work? Now the trick is you have to relate that to what the actual table number is. And that's where, again, so this is Windows descriptions. But if you go to tools, again, go into resource descriptions, I can go into tables. And then I can go and find the tables that I need. So again, financial here. And as you see, there's a display name, a technical name. Expand that so there's the technical names. And you can find them all this way. And here's the physical name here, GL40401 is the reconcile module. Things like this. So this is a good way to get into understanding what all of these table names mean and what they translate to. However, fortunately for all of us, once GP 2010 or so came out, Microsoft got smart and gave us some views. So views in SQL, to keep it simple, is nothing more than a big select statement. Could be joining multiple tables together, but Microsoft gave us a bunch of views to use to make it easier to report against. Part of the problem, besides the table naming conventions of GP is that also the column names are not very descriptive. So, for example, customer number is CUSTNBR, or SOP type, which is great, but SOP type values are actually numbers, and not everybody knows what number 1 is or number 2, that the number 2 in the SOP type column is order. So Microsoft made a bunch of different views here, so such as accounts, account transactions, bank transactions here. You'll also see down here receivables transactions, purchasing transactions. The one I use quite frequently is typically sales transactions and sales line items to get all the sales information. And these directly translate into those both open and history tables. They combine them both, which is great. And then when you look at the columns, they actually have changed the column names to be something that's understandable. So I actually know what extended price is. I understand what SOP number is. It's not some abbreviated column name. You can see everything's totally spelled out. And the great thing about this is very important when we start getting into using Power BI, is that we can just use this view and then create our reports from that. So this is very easy for an end user, somebody who's not a database developer, to use. They just need to know which views they need to use, and then they can generate the reports themselves. All right, so the next thing I want to do is let's go ahead and get started with starting with Power BI. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is go to powerbi.com, and once you're on powerbi.com, there is a sign up for free, and there's a sign up box here. And once you sign up, you'll have an account. Now, the important thing here is you can't enter in a personal account. Microsoft will recognize that, so you can't do, jeffsen@cox.net or anything like that. You have to use a domain account. You don't necessarily have to be on Office 365. You can use a free account. However, the free account is much more limited. So, for example, we look at pricing. This pricing screen will actually show you what the limitations are, and for the most part, it's all about collaboration and the data refresh are the big components that you miss out on when you're not on the Power BI Pro license. And if you're already on Office 365, it's nothing more than checking another box for each user to provide it. So now once you set up your powerbi.com account, the next thing you want to do is you want to download a couple different tools. The first one is powerbi.com. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just log into Power BI. So we'll just sign in here. So now I'm on Power BI. This is powerbi.com, and I already have some different dashboards and whatnot on here, but one of the things I did want to show to you real quick is some of the icons up here at the top. So the big one that you need to know about right now is this download icon. So here you can download Power BI Desktop and the Data Gateway. These are the two tools that you need to get started. Power BI Mobile, Publisher for Excel, Analyze, these are additional tools for Power BI that you can get into later. But for now, let's focus on Power BI Desktop and the Gateway. So once I download those, I can install them very quickly. So we'll do Power BI Desktop first. And it's pretty much nothing more but a next. And then once we install this, we'll go ahead and jump into installing the gateway as well. So the purpose of the gateway is that's what's controlling the communication between Power BI, that's what's controlling communication of your data between your servers and Power BI. So if you need data to be refreshed and synchronized to powerbi.com, you need to set up the gateway. So we finished that piece. And then the next piece is the installer for the data gateway. Now the options here get a little bit different. So this has gone through some iterations, and historically they used to have personal gateway here, different tools. So you can install two different types of gateway. The personal gateway may be something that you need to use if you want to just get started on your own. and it'll just be refreshed by you. The on-premise data gateway, this is something that you would initially install probably on your SQL Server box, that sort of thing. And this is what's used by multiple users, can be used by not just Power BI, but also all the Power Apps stuff and Logic Apps, Microsoft Flow, some of the new tools coming out from Microsoft. And then also schedules live refresh and also the live query functionality, where the live query functionality is more about if you're connecting from Power BI to, let's say, analysis services, you can do a direct query as opposed to having your data managed and refreshed up in PowerBI.com. So I'll just do the data gateway, and then once I do that, it's going to ask me to accept the conditions, terms and conditions. Okay, so then you have to put in now this is going to be the email to identify the account is going to be your Power BI account email address. So I'm using jfan@fmtconsultants.com. Once I do that, it's basically going to authenticate me and sign me into Power BI through the gateway. Now I'm going to register a new gateway on this computer. If you had an older gateway, you could also migrate or replace an existing one, but I'm going to register a new one. Now I need to know what am I going to call this gateway name, because all the gateways are visible from PowerBI.com. So I'm going to call this Jeff's Surface. And then I need a recovery key. Click configure. Now the gateway's set up. It's basically a service running on your machine. And to verify that, what I can do is I can jump right over to Power BI here, click on the settings widget there, and go down to Manage Gateways. And you'll see here's my Jeff Surface gateway that I just installed. So now I know I have connectivity between the two environments. I can test it, make sure it's working. I'm all good to go. So now let's go ahead and get into actually getting our data and go ahead and make some reports. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to my dev VM here. This one. So here I've already started making one, but I'm going to go ahead and say get data and get some more data here. So I'm going to get data. I'm going to pick a SQL Server. And first thing I have to do is put in my server name, which is dev 16. I know my database is 2. Now I can do import or direct query. I'm going to go ahead and do import. One of the big requirements if you're going to do direct query type stuff is you have to have some Active Directory stuff lined up. Since my servers are in my basically development domain, they don't actually tie up to my Active Directory. So I'm going to do import instead, so my data is just synced up to the cloud. Now once I do that, it's going to go ahead and give me a selection list of all the different objects that are in my GP2 database, which is the basically sample company. Now here you can see all those tricky names of all those tables, CFM, RM001, all that kind of stuff's in here, but I already know I want to do sales transactions. So I'm just going to type sales into the filter box, and here I can see sales transactions. So I'm going to go ahead and just select that one. And then if I wanted to, I could manipulate which of these columns I wanted to bring in by clicking on Edit here and going through and editing which columns I wanted to see. So I could go here and click Edit. And this is getting into our modeling now. So what I can do is I can just go through here and just start deselecting columns that I don't really care about. And as you can see, there are a ton of columns in these views. But I could easily just remove columns, filter on columns, things like that. What else? So remove columns, remove columns. So if I wanted to, I could go maybe all the way out here. I could highlight a bunch of different columns and say remove columns. So very, very easy to do. And then once I'm done with that, I'll just say close and apply. And what that's going to do is it's going to start evaluating the changes I made. It's going to create the data model, and then it's going to upload the data for me. So while that's going on, one of the other things I wanted to show you as well is the other options you can do is connecting to GP analysis cubes as well, because this will take a couple minutes here. So while we're doing that, let's go ahead and start another instance of Power BI Desktop. And the great thing about GP analysis cubes is it's basically a data warehouse. You refresh it once a day, and it pulls all the data from all your different modules into different cubes. Now, the one thing that the GP analysis cubes provide is if you have multiple companies, this is one thing you always have to keep in mind with reporting. If you have multiple companies, you'll have multiple GP databases. Well, it's a lot harder to make queries that are combine data from multiple databases. It's a little bit more time consuming because you have to do unions and things like that. Well, with GP analysis cubes, it already does that. It already combines everything together. So you have GP analysis cubes, financial, and then you'll have, you know, basically you can filter by which company you want to look at, or if you want to look at them all together, you can do that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and say get data. And then the differences here is now instead of doing a SQL Server database, I'm going to do an analysis services database. And my analysis services database is on this box. And then I can click OK. Now the beauty of this is here you can see GP Dynamics Analysis Cubes, and these are all the different cubes I could actually do reporting against. So I could pick the sales cube, and it kind of gives you an idea of what kind of stuff is in here. Customers, items, master date, the extended price, cost, things like that. So, and this is GP Analysis Cubes is also accessible from Excel. So if you're a big pivot table person, you can do lots of pivot tables on it, that sort of thing. So if we wanted to do that as an example, we could do something like open up customer dimension here. We'll just pull in, let's say, customer number. Actually, let's do customer name. And then if I just want to see maybe how many sales they've had over time, we'll go ahead and pull up our measures. And we can see profit here, extended cost, extended price. So we'll do extended price. Now I can see over time, really quickly, how much each of these customers have spent. And if I really wanted to see it broken out more like a pivot table, I could throw in the date of the transaction in here as well. And then I could go ahead and pivot on this data. We'll just move the date field up to columns. And we need to get rid of it from here. Oops. Back up here. Something happened. There we go. Now we do that, and we'll put date, columns. There we go. Now we have basically a big pivot table, really easy. If I don't want to see the days, I can just uncheck the days. But again, this is kind of basically sales over the last couple years by month for all my customers. Now let's go ahead and go back. Let's go ahead and close out of this. But one thing I do want to point out before doing that is you can see these are just basically all the dimensions and all the measures for the cubes. And this is the same functionality you'll get in Excel as well. When you connect to the cube, you'll be able to slice and dice the pivot tables and do visualizations and all that sort of thing right against the cube. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out of this one and go back to our other one that we did. So what we'll see now is over here on the right side is all of our fields that I've tied to, and we just did sales transactions. So I'm going to go ahead and make another new report here on this tab, and we'll just call this maybe salesperson. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go and open sales transactions. Now this is that view from GP, and you can see here's all of the fields that are in this view. And let's go ahead and find maybe the salesperson field, salesperson ID. Pull that on there. So now we can see here's all of our different salespeople. And let's go ahead and pull, we want to know how much they've sold, so we'll just do document amount. Again, you can just scroll up and down and find all the information you need. So here's document amount. So great, here's all the stuff that these people have sold. Now let's say I want to know more details. Who are the customers of these that this person has sold into? So now I can go ahead and select customers. And what I'm doing, I'm going to put it down here. Move it down a little bit. And then again, we want to see maybe document amount. Now what you'll see is as I select each of these, oops, not working as expected. Let's start over here. Remove. Okay, there. So we'll go ahead and select customers name. That here. We could change this into a slicer as well. And as you select the slicer for the person, you'll see that information over here has changed. So we can go ahead and throw in, let's see, obviously customer number is not enough. We can throw in document number or document amount. You can see how much sales they're doing. Maybe another thing would be, hey, I want to know how many orders they're doing. So I could do something like, let's say, SOP number. So I put SOP number on here, and then I'm going to go ahead and change this up here through my visualizations to a KPI. Actually, I'm going to do it to a card instead. And it's going to show me the first SOP number, which isn't what I want. So I need to come over here. Instead of saying first, I need to count instead. Oops. So now I can see that here's my count. So now for Aaron, he sold into these 5 different customers and a total of 53 orders. So now once I'm done with this, I'm ready to actually publish this up to Power BI. I can go ahead and just simply click the Publish button, save it. So I'm saving my Power BI desktop file. I need to authenticate myself. Select which workspace. I'm going to replace the existing data set up there. And okay, so success, it's great. I could open it in Power BI, click on that link there, but I believe I already have it open here. So let's go back to my workspace. So when I go here and I look at my data sets, it was this Power BI demo as the data set. And do Power BI demo 2. Oops. Let's go back into here. So now we're on PowerBI.com. I just clicked through the link instead. It brought me right here. So here we can see it's the same report we had. Now, once I'm in here, I can do things like copy these to a dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and take this count of order numbers, and I'm going to pin this up to my existing Power BI demo dashboard. Now when I go to my Power BI demo dashboard, here's my count of SOP numbers, orders, for that data set that I just did. This is from another report. So once you're up here, you'll see that everything is here. So my data sets are up here. I can actually make new reports here if I wanted to from this data set. So here's the sales transactions. I already had sales lines and accounts. I did journal entry, GL data as well. So I could get in here and do a new report if I wanted to see maybe the types of sales and what are the things I'm selling the most of. But I'll be honest with you, I think that's going to take me some work to do this. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to ask my dashboard what I'm selling the most of. So I'm going to do sales by item, maybe extended price. Let's see, I can do sales by item, extended cost, extended price. So that's not exactly what I'm looking for. Let's try, and this is what I definitely encourage everybody to play around with. But what I can do is I can say, let's say sum extended price by item. Let's do that. See if that works. Oh, there you go. That one worked. So now, just like that, just by typing in something, it created a chart for me already, and I can see that, you know, I'm selling the most of these fax can 9800s. And then I can pin that and pin that to a dashboard. Let's create another one. Let's say number of orders by sales person. So here I can see the number of sales orders by person. It kind of tells you what it's doing here and which data set it's coming from. But here's all the orders by the people. And again, I can pin this one to my dashboard. Now if we go look at our dashboard, there's all these different little charts and graphs I just made by typing in a sentence. I didn't even have to build them out. Really cool, fun stuff. So now the next step is, great, I'm seeing all this stuff. How do I see it in GP? So I wanted to kind of take the last few minutes here to just show you a couple of those things. I wanted to kind of cover looking at it in GP. So when we go to GP, we'll close our sales transaction entry window. We don't need that. Okay, so when you go into the setup of GP, there is basically, clicking too fast, sorry. Under Tools, Setup, System, Reporting Options down here. This is where you set up things like your connectivity to SQL reporting services, connectivity for Excel services, those types of tools. I'm just waiting for the window to come up here. But basically, once we set up going to Power BI, we can actually show the Power BI charts and graphs and things that you've pinned to dashboards right here on the home page of Power BI. So while I'm waiting for that to come up, since my server seems to be going a little bit slow, one of the other requirements, oh, here we go. So now that this has come up, so here you can set up your connectivity to your SQL reporting services, that sort of thing. But over here, you'll see a button called Power BI. So click on the Power BI button. It's asking for client ID. Now, in order to do that, you have to register with the Power BI service online in order for GP to actually see and leverage the REST services from PowerBI.com to display the charts and graphs and reports and things like that in GP. So how do I get this ID here? Well, the trick is you have to go to the website. I've pulled it up here. And you register an application for PowerBI.com. So here's the URL, dev.powerbi.com/app. So you sign in with your existing account. So I signed in as Jeff N. Now we have to name it Dynamics GP. Dynamics GP demo. Okay, now it's not a server-side app. We're doing a native app. And then you need to put a URL here as well, and it can pretty much be almost any URL. So then I'm going to select my data sets. And then I say register app. Now what will happen is I'll get a key here. So here's the key. So I'm going to take that key that's here and go back into GP and put that in this box here. Now once I do that, what should happen when you go to the home page and you say customize this page, I apologize for the slowness here, it seems to be taking a minute to come up, is we'll go to the home page and you'll have options to add Power BI components to the home page. But it seems to be going a little slow. Let's try this again. One of the other things I wanted to show as well is I actually did run into a problem when I initially did this, and there is a table out there called this SY40800 in the Dynamics database. So this is something for your dev guys. If I query on that table, it's basically that setup screen. But out here on the right side, there is a Power BI client ID. That's what we cut and pasted from when we registered online. But there's also this Power BI site URL. Now, in the GP 2016 install, this URL is on that configuration screen. But in the R2 version, this is not on the configuration screen, and I actually had to come in here and paste in the URL to my dashboards into this PowerSite URL in order for it to come up right in GP. So I just wanted to put that out there. If anybody has any problems, is to check this table and look at that column. Let's go back and see if for some reason my home page settings aren't coming up. Not quite sure what's going on here. I guess what we could do is log out of GP and log back in. And then after we do this, the last thing I wanted to cover real quick was the OData feed and some of the setup and setup for that and also what the features of it are. I think it's the most powerful feature out of everything, and it's going to really accelerate some of the Power BI development here, once we all start moving towards the OData feed and get on the newer versions of GP. So here is my GP coming up. Customize the home page. There we go. All right, so customize the home page. Power BI. So now we have a little icon here. Now, like I said, if this checkbox is grayed out, check that table I referred to earlier. So once I click on that box, there's a blue arrow that comes up. And what I can do is I can select, this has gone out and queried my PowerBI.com website, and I can go ahead and select things that I want to see. So one of the things we did was we did, I believe, count of sales orders. So we'll just put that there. We'll just do this extended price. Put that one up. And then once I do that, here's our different charts and graphs, or here's our 2 different charts that we put onto our dashboard up in Power BI right here in the home page of GP. Now, one of the last thing I wanted to cover was the OData feed. So the OData feed is great in the sense that it's going to make it much easier to surface up data to report developers, people who just want to go into PowerBI.com and do reporting. The other thing that's great about it is you can expose it externally, obviously, and then just get at it right from the PowerBI.com service, as well as you can open up and leverage the GP OData service, not just for GP data, but for other things as well, and leverage that service to service up that data. So going through the setup is basically the big requirement for the setup of the OData feed is you're going to need to have a certificate. So when I go and start up the GP installation media, what you'll see is GP OData service here at the bottom. And when I try and install that, I actually already have it installed in here, but if I do a repair, it's going to show me the same, ask for the same settings. So you have to have a SQL connection to the server that you're going to use during this installation. And then you have to have a certificate. This is the important piece. You need to have a cert that you'll use, and you also need to have a domain account that will be used by the OData service. So it's a Windows service that's going to run, and you'll have to have an account for that. So those are the basic components that you need to set up the OData service. Now, once you have the OData service set up, you need to go into GP and do some configuration here as well. Now, the first thing to show you is under System now there's an OData tab here, and there's Configure OData Source. So this is the first step you have to do. And if you go into here, what you'll see is it's the same reporting tools setup screen. So now we have, instead of Power BI, we go to the OData tab, and here you have to provide the OData service URL. Well, what is that URL? Well, one of the ways to get that URL is just go into the directory for that OData feed. So it's under Microsoft Dynamics, OData service. And then basically look for the config file, which is here. If I open that config file, I can see under here, OData service host and port. Here is my URL that I need to put into that box in GP. So once you do that, then you're done with this screen. Click OK and get out of there. Now, what OData service also does is it adds a bunch of different tasks and security to the model in GP. One of the important things you have to do before you even get into that is you actually have to now map GP logins to Windows account logins. So if I go into System User, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up my JFN account here, is now you can see here's my SQL account, JFN, but I need a directory account as well. This is my Windows account. because when the OData service authenticates, it's going to authenticate with the Windows account, and then it has to match that up to the SQL login for GP. So this is the next step you'll have to do. You'll have to set up and map the Jeff Fenn account to the account for the SQL login for GP. And then once you do that, you can go in and assign different security and which OData feeds they can see. So if I go into user security, you'll see if you scroll down, you'll start seeing all these OData feed. These are all different types of security roles for leveraging the OData feed. So you have to set that up for each person. Now, the next thing is, what am I going to publish? So if you go to Tools, Setup, again, System, OData, there's data sources. So what are my data sources for the OData feed? Well, the OData feed can leverage lots of different data sources. It can do views, stored procs, and tables. And remember all those views I was showing before that are named very logically, account summary, sales transactions, that sort of thing. You can use those and publish those, as well as the tables themselves, as well as stored procedures. So you can publish anything you want, and also if you had other views that you created on your own that are maybe pulling in e-commerce data or data from another line of business application, or you make a custom stored procedure, you can add all those types of objects into here to publish them to the OData service as well. So now I've selected which things that I want to publish. I click OK here. Now when I have one more thing to do, I go into Setup, System, OData Feed, Publish OData. Now I select which of those objects I selected I actually do want to publish. You may not want to publish all of them. So you check off the pieces you want to publish, and then basically all you need to do is you give the end user the pertinent URL of the thing that they're trying to access. So if I wanted to report against the OData feed for sales transactions, I just enter this URL in, I authenticate myself, and then I'm off and running and building up my report. So that's the OData feed. So with that in mind, I want to go back to my slide deck because we're getting at the top of the hour here. So step by step, right? So what are the things you have to do? You have to create an account on PowerBI.com. You have to have a company account. Personal accounts won't work. You would need to download and install the Power BI desktop. You need to download and install the data gateway, so your data will synchronize up to PowerBI.com. There is direct query type capability, which is better than the syncing of the data, obviously, but that takes a little bit more IT effort to implement some of the direct query stuff, so just keep that in mind. For example, you have to make sure your email address from what you're using to log into PowerBI.com is with an Active Directory, tying to your domain account, and that sort of stuff. So there's some more IT stuff to do the direct query type of stuff. But if you just want to do the synchronized data stuff, you should be able to get running right away. And then from Dynamics GP standpoint, you definitely need to get your credentials for your SQL database. They need to hopefully give you maybe a read-only account or something like that. And then just start building. And just drag and drop and see what kind of stuff you can create and come up with. So with that in mind, if anybody has any questions, I feel I can try and answer some of them or
yeah, yeah, Jeff, we got a couple here, mainly around the installation of the gateway. Mm-hmm. First one, does the gateway need to be on the server or should it be on the workstation?
It can be on either. It can be any place. Like if you're using the personal gateway, I'd probably put that on the workstation. But the data gateway, the enterprise one, I would probably put more on your enterprise environment, like on your SQL Server. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same SQL Server or a SQL Server at all where you're accessing the data. It just needs to be able to see the data where it is. And you always want to have it on. So it needs to be a server that's always up and running, because the workstation, you may shut down occasionally. So it's just a Windows service that's going to be syncing data.
Yeah, and with that, you answered the other one, because the other one was gateway needs to be installed on the SQL Server machine, correct? I think you covered that.
Yep. All right,
So
well.
that'll be all the questions. Oh, one more.
Sure.
Here it is. Let me pull it up. What is the difference between personal and enterprise?
On the gateway? So with regards to the gateway, the personal is more about syncing yourself and that sort of thing. The enterprise one is shared by lots of people. So once you install it once on a server somewhere, anybody who's developing Power BI reports can leverage that same gateway. That's the big thing.
And that's it. Thank you, Jeff.
So a couple things. One is this is just very high level, hopefully to get you guys started with Power BI and getting your data from GP. Obviously, reach out to me if you have any questions, and I'd love to help. I will be doing some more in-depth Power BI sessions at Enverge here coming up in a couple months, as well as we already have some videos out there on some sessions we've done with Power BI, as well as the material online is phenomenal. But the big thing with Power BI is trying to keep up. Basically, they come out every month with new features and enhancements, so it's definitely good to go check out the website and get on a newsletter and try and keep up. And with that in mind, I don't have anything else. Enverge, come May 25th. I would love to have you join us. I'll be doing sessions on Enverge as well. We'll have sessions across all of our practices. But again, reach out if you have any questions, and I hope this was helpful for you guys.
Yeah, and as Jeff said, we're expecting 400 plus industry professionals at our Enverge event, and we would love to have all of you there. It's our 5th annual one, and we're going to be covering everything from the latest trends and technologies in Microsoft, Oracle, NetSuite, and SAP. It'll be on May 25th at the Marriott Del Mar, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. If you have any other questions, we will be following up with all of you. You can feel free to ask at that time. We truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us, and hope to see you at future events, especially Enverge. Have a great day.